Hello, everybody. I'm Victoria Reynoldson, communication and culture coach, and welcome to today's Wednesday Words. And this is the first one of February. It's for 2nd of February, 2022. And it actually happens today is Groundhog Day, which I don't know if you remember, there was a famous film about this back in the 1990s with Bill Murray. And it was about a man who was destined to repeat the same day over and over again. In fact, we use that phrase Groundhog Day to suggest when things are being repetitive and we're kind of repeating the same kinds of tasks or behaviors. And in fact, this is highly, highly relevant for today's topic because, I work with my clients in a way which helps them also explore not only communication confidence, but it also helps them understand their mindset and how they're communicating and interacting with others. Now, one of the ways that I do this is by helping them with a particular tool that I have available to use, which is a neurometric profiling tool. And this is a particular tool that gives you an insight into how the brain works and how your specific brain is working. So the kinds of preferences you have for thinking and how that's influencing those communication interactions. Now, that's really, really valuable because we all have our preferences, we all have our ways of doing things. And this is a positive thing, right? Because if we do things in the same way, we create shortcuts, this makes our routine more efficient and we can get things done quicker. So that's definitely a positive. But there's also a bit of a downside sometimes, which is if we keep doing things the same way, we don't challenge them. We just keep going, doing the same pattern. And that can turn into a negative pattern sometimes without us even realizing it. And if we don't take that time to step back and challenge it, then in fact, it becomes very, very ingrained. So we sometimes need some help to step back and realize that that pattern isn't helping us anymore. So let me tell you a bit more about this neurometric profiling and what this means and how this might help you today break out of the Groundhog Day feeling. So the way this profile works is it makes the assumption that we all can tap into all parts of our brain, that we have the ability to flex our thinking, to think in different ways. And there are 4 key types of thinking, preferences that is, but we generally have 1 or 2 preferences usually, which are our most common ways. They are the patterns, the automatic ways that we think about the world. And it's also the automatic way that we interact with other people. It's how we communicate. Now, that's great if it works for you. But of course, if we are working with people who are very different to us in the way that they are thinking, in the way that they are communicating and interacting with us, that can lead to some problems, frustrations, even conflict sometimes if we have 2 quite extreme different ways of looking at the world. So it's really important that we do understand this so that we can actually have better interactions, more productive interactions. That means that we can really deliver our results. So let me give you an example of this. There is one particular profile, which is called the reasoning profile. Now, people who have this preference are very rational, logical. They like to talk about facts and are quite objective. They like to sort of step back and examine the situation. The opposite profile is a profile called feelings. And not surprisingly, the person who has a preference for this is very focused on how do I feel? How do others feel? Building empathy and really prioritizing the team spirit and harmony. You can see that with those 2 examples that actually there might be a reason why these 2 sometimes end up in a conflict in their communication style, because they're approaching the thinking in very different ways and they're prioritizing different things when it comes to projects. So, what is important is that if you have somebody who is a very strong reasoning preference, has that preference there, that they are able to have the flexibility, the agility within their communication to think about it from the other person's perspective, from the feelings preference perspective. And also think about and plan even their communication approach and the words they're using, the types of questions they're asking, they know will build a better relationship with the other person. It's also the same the other way around, right? For the feelings person, they may need to adapt their own communication style and approach because their preference perhaps is not the way that the reasoning preference really prioritizes communication. If I give you a different example, there is a profile which is a spontaneous preference. They have that preference. And that person who has that preference is really focused on ideas, creativity. They like to think about the future and what if. And they really like to think about the big picture and come up with something really different. The opposite profile, that person who has the preference is for specific. So they love the detail and the organization. They love the plan and the process. They want to follow it through all the way to the end. And so you can see with these two profiles how different they are in the way that they're thinking about things, how they approach life, and actually, the ways, what they're talking about, what's important to them. So the spontaneous profile will be definitely talking about the why questions. And the specific profile person who has that preference will be talking about the, how does this work? How is it going to happen? So that's really important to know because again, in that situation, two very different ways of thinking, two very different ways of communicating, but we all have that ability to have that communication agility to flex how we're connecting with others, the language we're using, the types of questions we're asking, to see it from their perspective, to help them along the process. So those are just two very, very brief examples. And, I do hope that's really helpful for you to understand how we can look at things from others' perspectives and actually break the pattern of Groundhog Day so that we can be more successful in our interactions in international teams or the teams that we're working with across languages and cultures. And, I hope it really helps you, give you that insight that we need to be careful as well sometimes to realize our own approach in communication, our own thinking preferences, and to be mindful of those, that sometimes we may need to break those patterns, automatic patterns that we're doing. If you have found this particularly interesting or have some questions that perhaps you want to ask me, then please do get in touch. I always love to hear from people. So I do love to hear your questions if there's something I can answer. And of course, if the neurometric profiling, you find this really fascinating and you're curious to learn more, this is a tool that I use with my individual coaching clients, but also with clearly corporate teams to help them understand how they're communicating with each other. And I would be delighted to talk to you if you'd like to find out more about that and how that fits into my communication and cultural programs. In the meantime, I do hope you have a good Groundhog Day. It's not too repetitive for you. And I also hope that you've enjoyed today's Wednesday Words. If you have, please feel free, if you're watching this on YouTube, to subscribe. And if you'd like to receive this on a weekly basis, make sure you subscribe to my emails so they come through automatically each week for you. Thank you so much, and I will speak to you soon. I'm Victoria Reynoldson, Communication and Culture Coach.